This episode is sponsored by Optify. Optify is a taskbar applet for Windows and Mac OS that helps you keep track of your device's Wi Fi and network connection information. With Optify, you can easily monitor crucial details like channel widths, signal strength, access point manufacturers, and more, all from a small window that sits conveniently in your taskbar. Plus, with live remote monitoring, you can even share data with remote users and get real time analysis. Just create an account at app.optify.com to access customized presets and take your network monitoring to the next level. Download a free trial at optify.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear Descent podcast. In this episode, we're going to go over the 5 Wi Fi books that every Wi Fi professional should read. And so we're going to start story time with the first book. We're going to read the CWNA textbook. Start with page 1. I'm just kidding. We're not going to read the books, but we're just going to summarize which books we think everyone should read or should at least have on your bookshelf. And so our first one is a book that I always recommend to every single person who's starting off in Wi-Fi, and that's the CWNA book by David Coleman and David Westcott. And so Francois and I both have this book. So that's this one right here. Maybe you can show yours, Francois, because there's a different versions.
Yeah.
These are the study guides, and you don't necessarily have to read the CWNA study guide, from front to back. And actually, you should put them together so we can see how
Yeah.
how thick that is. So the one that I have is a lot of pages. I think it goes up to 1,024 pages. How many pages does your book
The
have,
one I
Francois?
have, I think it's 947.
Okay. Actually, it's
947.
mine's 1,013. So
Mhm.
there is some additional content between the versions that we have, but both are really good. And if you're getting your CWNA, that book is a great one to start off with. And also, if you need it for reference, it's a great book to have just sitting on your bookshelf because you can.
Mhm.
I've taken that book out plenty of times and have gone to a very specific section to refresh what I'm missing on a certain topic. And that could
Mhm.
either be something very technical like preambles or looking at subcarriers, um, looking at very specific frame types, you name it, right? What do you think, Francois?
Yeah, it's an amazing reference book. The latest version is the one you have, the 108. If you're looking at it, and like you said, for me it's the same. I recommend it for anyone who's asking me which book should I read. This one is definitely, the first one. It introduces all of the key features that we're using in Wi-Fi, every day, all of the vocab, all of the concepts. Sometimes it doesn't go very deep into some of the concept, but at least you get introduced to those concepts,
Yeah.
and it's very complete. So you get to understand the entire scope of what Wi-Fi um, is, I guess, and yeah, it's even if it's a big book, like you say, you don't have to read it from top to bottom all at once. You can just
Yeah.
read chapters per chapter. You don't
Yeah.
even have to read it in
One
order if you
chapter
don't
every
want to.
night before bedtime. That's good.
Yeah, perfect, right?
Yeah.
um so it's no it's a really nice book, I think. Yeah, I think if you want to get serious about Wi-Fi, you should have this book with you.
Yeah. All right. So, what is the second book you recommend, Francois?
um So I put the personally I put the CWDP book because when I started, yeah, I got a lot out of this book. Um, it kind of helps you to structure your work, right? It kind of gives you tips on how you should be talking to customers, gathering requirements. That part really helped me out when I was starting, because I didn't have much experiences in building Wi-Fi networks. So for me, it was really a really nice book to kind of structure my thinking and how I should go about working on different Wi-Fi projects. Um, so CWDP was was pretty good for me. I don't know about you, Roel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
CWDP was one of my favorite certifications just because I tend to do a lot of design. And so I did focus on that book and making sure I had those design methodologies in place. I was designing properly to capacity and also coverage. And it's a vendor neutral certification. So that book kind of goes and talks about different kinds of environments from carpeted office
hmm
space to warehouse. And you'll definitely learn and become a better designer when it comes to Wi Fi.
Yeah. So this one definitely makes my top five. Um, Also, like in terms of Wi-Fi education, I feel like, anyway, for me, I felt like I read a lot of books early on, but then the
Mhm.
more I knew, the less I read books. Like the more I was getting educated left and right about different topics. Um, so this is going back for me. This is going back a few years in
Yeah.
when I was actually learning Wi-Fi. But CWDP definitely helped me
Yeah.
to in my day to day job.
And this book is for the older exam. Just so you
hmm
know, that's the one I like to read. I think that's the same for you, Francois, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
this one contains a lot of information, and over time, that the official study guide for CWDP has gotten smaller because they really started just trying to give you information for the exam. But that book is more than the exam. It gives you information that you would use in the real world as well.
hmm
So it's a lot more than the exam. Could be a reference book at times, but I think it's useful, and I think it's important for a lot of people getting into Wi-Fi. That's a book you should definitely read and be used to, because designing Wi-Fi is what a lot of us are doing, right? Because we're
hmm
either replacing Wi-Fi, or you have a new office or a new building and you need to add Wi-Fi to it. So design is where you're going to start.
And also, if you find yourself watching some presentations from WPC, for instance, and not fully understanding what people are talking about, or they make jokes and everyone laughing, but you don't understand why. Reading these books will help you to kind of
What kind
you
of
know
jokes are they cracking, Francois?
I like why Wi-Fi jokes, like
Oh, those memes, those Wi-Fi memes.
the private jokes for the Wi-Fi guys. Uh,
I must not be in that
the
circle because I don't know what jokes they are.
I don't like the SCA versus the MCA, those type of things, right?
Ah,
Well,
gotcha, gotcha.
anyway, if you read those books, you have a better understanding, right, of what they're
Yes.
talking about. So it definitely helps.
Yeah, maybe I'll use ChatGPT to summarize that for me. We'll be right back to the show. This episode is sponsored by Optify. Optify is a taskbar applet for Windows and Mac OS that tracks and displays all of your devices' Wi Fi and network connection information. The applet consists of a small window that appears in the bottom right corner of the screen. The Home tab will show you the name of your current Wi Fi network, what channel widths it's operating on, and the access point's manufacturer. To the right of this is your current signal strength, followed by a copy button, which will copy all of that information in the top bar. And now the latest version of Optify Agent supports live remote monitoring. Click on the share icon in the bottom right. From there, you can choose between sharing via a share ID or a randomly generated URL. Then press the play button to start sharing data. Send the URL to a remote user and have them open it in a browser of their choice. Now, the remote technician can view all of this network data in real time by creating an account and signing in online at app.optify.com. You can create customized preset tabs to display different sets of information for analysis. All right. So, what's the third book? Let me get our list. All right. The third book, this one I highly recommend. It's a much newer book. It's by J.J. Minella, and it's on Wi Fi security. So, it's the wireless security architecture. And this will give you
hmm
information on doing Wi Fi security and enterprise networks. And I got this book because I find that I tend to be um, I need to work on Wi-Fi security, right? And there's a lot of aspects to Wi-Fi security that are hard to understand, and knowing how certain parts of security work, like WPA3. How does that actually work, right? And
Hmm.
so JJ goes into great detail into, for example, WPA3, and also the nuances of WPA3 for every vendor that's out there, and
Hmm.
how it's different in terms of the language. Um, but she goes into great detail of security. She comes from the security world, so she is an authority in security, but she also has Wi-Fi expertise, and which I think is a perfect combination, because people take security for granted and think Wi-Fi. I think a lot of people just think Wi-Fi is secure by default, but
Hmm.
I mean, we do Wi-Fi sniffing over the air, so
Hmm.
there's a lot that you
Yeah.
could hide. But she really writes this well. It's not gonna be super technical in that it goes over your head. She describes even what different roles would 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 play into Wi-Fi security, and talks about how security goes into a plan and a design methodology. So
Hmm.
this book I highly recommend, because it goes into detail even to like frame exchanges of what that looks like.
Yeah, that book is. I think that's the latest one I've read. In the entire list we have, and you're right. It's really good, especially right now because WPA3 has been around for a few years, but we are actually starting deploying it in the real world right now. So you can really help understand the technology, the limitations, what we should be doing, how we should be organizing our testing, the migration plan. She kind of helps go get there, in the book, and just like any other Wi-Fi books that we're talking here, you don't have to read it from top to bottom. You can go and reference it, different chapters if you're looking for a specific piece of information, and it's very nice, very nice.
Yep.
um yeah, and
Uh,
like you said, the security stuff sometimes, like, as a Wi-Fi guys, you said like most people think Wi-Fi is secure by default, but I feel like you have people that think that way, and then on the other spectrum you have people that think the opposite, say Wi-Fi is
yeah.
not secure because it's in the air.
Oh
So
yeah.
you kind of have to go deeper in the details to kind of explain, what part is secure, what part is not as secure, and all of that.
Yep. So these last two books that we're going to recommend are very, very technical and dive deep into Wi-Fi. This one I read early on in my career, and I still look at it because it has so much information in it. But it's called 802.11 Wireless Networks by Matthew Gast, and it'll go into the different frames, really analyze it, and tell you what things are, like PLCP framing and processing. That's a topic that I tend to need to go back into this book and really read what that is. And I find that if you really want to become an expert in Wi-Fi and the nitty-gritty details of how it works, start with this book. And then Matthew Gast has other books as well that go deep
Mhm.
into the topic of Wi-Fi. And if you read that book, you'll have to reread it again, because it is a difficult read, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
of how technical it gets. But you'll really, really understand how Wi-Fi works, and that'll make you get closer to being an actual Wi-Fi expert.
Yeah, these books, I would say, read it with a notepad, right? Because
Yeah,
sometimes you would want to kind of take notes or, draw different things out. But like you said, they kind of make an impact on you. Like, I still remember reading, not this one, but he created a follow-up version for the AC protocol, which I have here. It's a much smaller book, and it
yep,
goes into the new stuff in AC. And I still remember to this age, reading the section about beamforming when he goes around and
yeah,
explain the matrix and what happened to sounding mechanism and all of this. And I was trying to kind of wrap my head around around the process. but it really helps you to understand, how Wi-Fi work, like you said, and which frames will be sent, and what would be the impact on the airtime, and you know and then it helps you to understand how useful it is in the real world as well.
Yeah, hold up that book
So
again, because that is the fifth book that we recommend. And,
yeah,
and again, like Matthew has other books as well. It's just these two we really like. And look, you can see how thin this one is too, which I like.
yeah, yeah, this one is not very um and so another thing I like about these books is that it's easier to read than the standards, right? The
Yes.
standards is
Yeah.
very dry to read, and I
Yeah.
mean, if you haven't spent a lot of time in it, you don't really know where
Yeah.
the information is.
That's
These
why I
books,
like his
they're
books. He
yeah,
really
they
summarizes the standard in a format that we can understand.
yeah, you have diagrams, and it's written in English that we can actually understand. So it's kind of like a translated version of the standards that people can better understand. So it's yeah, they're pretty nice books, and you can go and look at the frames, look at the structures of the frames.
Yeah.
um so I mean, after the CWNA, start with the CWNA, and then if you're hungry for more information about the frames, then these guys are great reads,
Yeah,
technical reads.
those the last two books that we just showed you are great supplements to the
Hmm.
CWNA book because it does dive in deeper. And then, as you have wireless captures and as you have examples
Hmm.
that you could use with the textbook, and you will want to try to get some examples to really understand how this works. And I did this for CWAP, and I know we didn't recommend a CWAP book, but um, the CWAP really gets you looking at all of these books because you will
Hmm.
have to dive into the frames, have to know
Hmm.
what those details are in the frame. And also when you're troubleshooting, right? Does beamforming work? That's one good question. And I think if you read that book by Matthew Gast and then try to capture this in action, then you can probably come to a conclusion of whether or
Hmm.
not it's working for that particular device or devices, or even on a specific wireless network. So I think all these books in general are nice to have. We will link out to them through Amazon links. You could either purchase the book, the physical book, and for those who like digital books, I think there are digital versions as well, either PDFs or through Kindle, Amazon Kindle. But this list will probably keep you busy reading for the next 2 years. But
Yeah.
it'll get you your certifications. These are great. And one thing I recommend with reading these books is trying to do the actual work with the book. Like Francois said, get a notepad out, try to capture some frames that are particular to that conversation in the book, and that's how you'll really understand as you try to implement it into a real world environment.
And you'll see what is actually implemented, what is not implemented, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mine's
there'll be
yeah,
things you won't see.
yeah. Like, how comes I never see these frames?
Yeah,
Like, okay,
like
now I know why.
maybe will it be worth it to stand up a WEP network, a web security network? I don't know, but you can see you may be able to test out why it's not secure, right? And
Hmm.
JJ will go into that in her book. She'll go
Hmm.
into WIPs if you haven't looked at WIPs. So there's a lot of things, a lot of learnings from these books, but learn by example, right? Don't just read through it, but try to implement it if you can, or try to
Hmm.
capture it if you can, and that'll help you understand it better. So again, we'll link out to the books. If there's a book that you recommend, let us know in the comments section. You can find all the links over at cleardescend.net/315. That's episode 315, and we'll have
Hmm.
all the links there. You could list out your books, your favorite books that you recommend for Wi-Fi engineers. But those are our top five right now that you should keep on your bookshelf. And I'm sure we'll have more to recommend on future episodes. Yep.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I was thinking about that too. There are other books out there that we probably missed. And there's one about Wi Fi 6 and Wi Fi 6E. That's a little bit more technical that came out, but I haven't read it. So,
Yeah.
um, So anyway, if you have other books that you want to share with us that helped you in your Wi-Fi work, feel free to do that.
All right.
Maybe we can read them.
Cool. We want to thank you guys for listening or watching to this episode, and we'll see you in the next episode, guys. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
This episode is sponsored by Optify. Optify is a taskbar applet for Windows and Mac OS that helps you keep track of your device's Wi-Fi and network connection information. With Optify, you can easily monitor crucial details like channel widths, signal strength, access point manufacturers, and more, all from a small window that sits conveniently in your taskbar. Plus, with live remote monitoring, you can even share data with remote users and get real-time analysis. Just create an account at app.optify.com to access customized presets and take your network monitoring to the next level. Download a free trial at optify.com.